guys, Stephanie here. I wanted to do a video on ebooks. This video is going to talk about embedding fonts into ebooks. Now, most of the time I do not embed fonts. Why? Because it's always been such a pain. All right, so when we embed fonts into an ebook, especially if it's like an Adobe font that maybe you're using from Typekit, or this particular font right here, Amethyst. It is a, I think it came from My Fonts. All right, so this is the font that we used in this book. Let me show you this book real quick. This is the ebook file. I will show you the print file. All right, so we just used this Amethyst. It's something that the cover designer used. So I just I also used it for the interior. And it's just an accent font for the other titles and the chapter titles. And then the first word of all the chapters is set in this Amethyst, and it's got a bunch of cool glyphs, a bunch of different glyphs for this font. It's got a bunch of swooshes, and the cool thing is, like, all the glyphs are done. There are many options for different letters, like the M, just a regular M, the swoosh goes one way, then there's just an under swoosh, and then there's a top swoosh, then there's a top and a bottom swoosh, and then there's a little swoosh that goes around the other way. So it's a really cool font that has a lot of different glyph options. But the problem with this font is that if you wanted to include it into an EPUB, it has to be encrypted. So if you read the EPUB license agreement, yeah, it must be embedded within a file format that protects the font software by means of encryption. Okay, so any fonts that you have, whether it's an Adobe font, any paid font, and maybe even some free fonts, read those licenses to determine if you can, first of all, embed it. Second of all, if it needs to be encrypted. All right, so if we look at the license price, like, I could get this font. Let me look. Buying choices, here we go. So I could buy it and include it in this ebook, and it would be only $20 just included in this ebook. All right, but that includes only one book. So to include it in one book, I'd have to pay $20. And if anybody else wanted to include it, you know, I would have to, you know, the price goes up exponentially. So I just do not do it this way, all right? Because to embed these types of fonts, we have to encrypt them. So why is encrypting a bad thing? Most retailers will not accept an EPUB that has encryption in them. All right, so that lies the problem. So how can we get around this? Well, we can use fonts that don't need to be encrypted. What fonts do not need to be encrypted? We have a whole 1,000 font collection here at Google Fonts. So you can find fonts that you can encrypt into an ebook on Google Fonts. So you could use a cursive font or whatever for your chapter titles in an ebook. All right. One, it will need to be an OTF. You will receive a validation error if you include a true type. However, it's not a big deal. There are some conversions. Convert true type font to OTF. There are some places that you can convert a true type font to an OTF font. So what I would do before you install it if you only have the TTF, go in and convert it to an OTF and then install the OTF on your computer. All right, so, but if you forget that, or if you already have the font on your computer and it's already in the InDesign document and it comes through as a true type font in the EPUB, there's ways you can work around it that you don't have to redo everything. You'll just need to change some code, switch out the font for the OTF font, and I'll show you the places in the ebook that you'll need to update. So, InDesign, when we export, let me go back to the ebook file. Now, one thing I did is I kept chapter in that amethyst font, okay? And it is actually now in a graphic, so it's not going to be embedded. All right, so that's something to think of. Let me make one quick change before I export. Okay. All right, so now when we export our InDesign file, export reflowable EPUB, yes, I want to save overview. Now you'll notice on this, I have it set to an EPUB 2.0. Most cases I'll do an EPUB 3.0, but this particular client is going to use Draft2Digital. And Draft2Digital will accept an EPUB 3.0, however, they have this service that takes an author's EPUB and allows them to update the back matter. And then it will redistribute that book to wherever the author has chosen to distribute it to. And that service only works if it's an EPUB 2.0. It does not work on EPUB 3.0. So if I know a client is going to use Draft2Digital, I will generate an EPUB 2.0 for them. So that's just something to note. All right, so the only thing that's going to be different than normal is that you do want to check this include embeddable fonts, all right? And everything else is good. So while this is exporting to an EPUB, now we are going to need to work on these drop caps. You can get them right in InDesign, but once you export, everything that you tried to make them right in InDesign is going to go away. So just know that that will cause you to do some work. So yeah, you'll see how they come through here. So we will work on that. We will work on those in the CSS. All right, so now that we have our EPUB, we're going to do the normal process. Let me close these. I do not need them anymore. Exit from InDesign. All right, so we're going to copy the file. We are going to convert it to a zip file. We are going to extract the zip file. And then we were going to look at the EPUB. All right, first let me check, make sure. Yeah, okay. I just did this a few minutes ago and only had like 7 files, and I had forgotten to split the EPUB on the chapter ornament. So I had to redo it. All right, so when InDesign embeds fonts, it does a couple of things. It adds an Encryption XML file. Delete that. We do not need it. Okay. And this is new. I do not know what this is. I'm going to have to research it and see if I have any problems with it. So I don't recall them ever putting in this before. My InDesign did update yesterday, so this may be something new that they're adding. And then the other thing that InDesign does with fonts is it creates a font folder, and it drops all the fonts that it is using in that folder. All right. However, we only want to embed the fancy font. All right, we only want to embed that Great Vibes regular font that's on Google Fonts. So I'm going to find this. Oh, sorry, wrong little field there. All right, so here's the Great Vibes font. One thing that you need to look at is the license. All right, most Google fonts are going to be an open font license or an Apache license. So you need to see, depending on what font it is, which license it falls under. All right, so this particular one is open font license. All right, cancel. And what I have for you, did I do that? Hold on just a second. Let me find something real quick. I deleted something out that I shouldn't have. Old. Prep. Old. I didn't even drop it in there. All right, I'll come back to this in a minute. So if you have a font, the Apache license you'll need to include if it's an Apache font. And then if you have, this one is an open font, so we're just going to create this one again. Just 1 second. Go back over here. Let me do this real quick. Sorry guys, I thought it was prepared here. Let's just download this one again, and then we are going to graphics, fonts, Google, Great Vibes. Now, most of the time when you download these, they should include the license with it. So I'm just looking. Okay. All right, so here we go. Here is the license. We need to copy this, and we need to put it into, let me get there again, EPUB. We need to put it in the font folder, all right? That's the first thing we do. We also need to delete out all of the fonts that InDesign put in that we will not use, and that's the main body text. We do not need that. We only want this Great Vibes font for the script areas. Okay, so delete those out. Let's make sure all right, so our encryption is out of the meta INF folder, so that's good. And we added the OFL, Open Font License text file in with the font. The next thing that we need to do is let's take a look at the content OPF page. We need to add one line because we need to put that OFL font license into our metadata, into our manifest for our content OPF page. So I have a little cheat sheet. So in that case, what I'm going to do is copy this line. We need to add it here. And what is it called? Open OFL dot text. And it's under font, and it was called OFL.text, and the type is just a plain text file. All right, so that needs to be added to the content OPF page. Now, if by chance you use a different font, let's see, Roboto. If you use something like Roboto, look at the license there, and it needs an Apache license, all right? So you can get the text version of an Apache license, and I actually already have that one saved on my computer, and so I can drop it in anytime if the particular font falls under the Apache license. And then I have my little cheat sheet for the Apache license here to drop into the content OPF page. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at the content OPF page to see what else we need to delete out. We deleted 3 fonts. Okay, so I need to delete those out of the content OPF page, otherwise we're going to have a validation error. Now, if for some reason you didn't use an OTF font, you used a TrueType font, but you went in and converted the font to a OTF file just to put in your ebook, you will need to make sure that you delete the TrueType font out of the font folder here and save the OTF file in this font folder. Then you will need to make sure you update the file name in the content OPF page. And also this media type is different for a TrueType font compared to an OpenType font, so you'll need to place the proper language here. So for an OpenType font, it's always going to be this vnd.ms-OpenType. So that's what you need to do the OPF to get it to work. There's no mention of the encryption file, so we did not need to worry about removing that from the content OPF page because that's in that meta-inf file and not the OEBPS file. So, all right, so we're going to close that down and take a look. The next thing that we need to do, I'm all over the place. The next thing that we need to do is update the CSS. All right, so with fonts, the very top of the CSS, it lists all the fonts that are included. So we need to delete the ones that we're not going to be using and just use the Great Vibes one. And again, if you had it as a TrueType font, but you changed it to an OTF, you need to make sure it's proper here. All right. So that's how we embed fonts. All right. Now, a couple of things we need to do. I'm going to do my normal cleanup in this CSS. So bear with me as I'm doing that. And get rid of all the normals. And then I do not need this Adobe. I don't even know how this came in. And we need to say serif here, serif here. Great Vibes, we're good there. And I always delete these page break things out because on an iPad, it puts in a blank page when you have that page break code, which is annoying. And it doesn't do it on any other device. So I delete those out for iPads only. It's one of those things you don't have to delete it, but I had some clients come to me and why do I have blank pages in my ebook? Well, that's why. So that's why I delete them out. One thing, if you do a lot of ebooks for clients, I definitely recommend, if you don't have any, is invest in a couple of ebook devices to test things out, because I would have never known that. I have a really old iPad, I have a couple of Kindles, and then I have my phone, and then I also test on the Kindle app as well as Kindle Previewer and Adobe Digital Edition. So it's always good to test out these EPUBs because all the different devices view differently, and what looks good on one may look like crap on another. So you just need to kind of figure out what is going to work universally for all the different devices. Okay. All right, so a couple of other things that I do. I'm going to change the font size to 1 EM. And then I am going to change the indent from 11 pixels to 1 EM. All right, I think I got rid of everything I need to in the here. So our CSS is much cleaner now. Unfortunately, InDesign likes to make it a cruddy old mess, and I just like to clean it up and make it look better. All right, so now that we've got that cleaned up, what we need to figure out is how we can get our drop caps to look right. So we are going to close this down, and I'm going to open up a couple of the pages. I just like to go through each page and kind of visually look at them. And as we're doing this, we're going to look at those drop caps, okay? All right, so here is the cover file. All right, so we're good. All right, then another thing as I always do in ebooks is I just switch out the title. Instead of putting what InDesign does, I always go in, and sometimes I will add the author name. And I will do this across the entire book. Okay. Let's just scrolling through and replacing all those titles with that Dark Flame by Cat Silver. All right. And then another thing I do, if people have their ebook devices set to read automatically, if there's not any description in the alt tags for images, it's not going to read anything. So any alt tags that are left blank, it will not say anything. And in some cases, you will want to have some sort of language in that alt tag for the image. So I am just going to put what this image says. Dark Flame, which is book 1 in the Flame-Born series by Cat Silver. Okay, and let me go back to this dedication. Everything looks good. I'll just go through each page one by one and look at it. I want this image to be left aligned. So I probably will change out. There was a whole bunch of junk in the alt tag for that image, so I just changed it out to Cat Silva. I want this image to be left aligned, and I don't think I have a code. All right, I have an image centered, so we're going to do this image left. And that should, all right, so that got that one. All right, yes, we want to save it. So acknowledgements, we don't need to worry about anything there. Links, always double check. Sometimes InDesign likes to do funny things to links. I had a book the other day, an author came to me and said, none of my links came through. And InDesign just decided not to put them in. I was like, okay. So always double check the links. Boy, I love it when InDesign just see all this mess. It just, and a lot of stuff like this you don't need to worry about, but I am real particular when it comes to code that I want things to be as simple as possible. So I have a tendency to clean it up because there is a bunch of garbage in here. They made it a lot more complicated than it should be. There's still some things that I can get rid of. So bear with me. Okay, so there's only 2 other spots. So we can do a find all. Okay. All right, so now we have a much cleaner page. Oh, if you're ever a website designer, those little things will drive you crazy too. So my background, I started designing websites in the 90s, so just these little things can drive you crazy. I'm just looking down here to make sure I can delete these. Yep. All right. All right, now much cleaner. Yay! We don't have to go crazy over a messy page. All right. Then I need to go in and add chapter. So I'm just going to type in chapter. And there's a find and replace thing that I could do for this, but it just makes it easy just to do it manually. So we're just going to add chapter in front of all the numbers. And I could have done this in InDesign, but it would not have set up a link properly, so I just do it in the code. And then we can reload it. And there we go. All right, so we're going to close that. Go to the next page. All right, so this looks pretty decent. All right, so now we have to worry about these drop caps. All right, so the drop cap is in a span class of ID generated drop cap 1. So we're going to find this in the CSS. All right, InDesign does not do a good job of inputting information for drop caps to work properly. First of all, I don't know why it assigns a -4 to the bottom margin and then a positive number to the top. You definitely want the top margin to be 0 or even 0.1 if it's like a font like this that's a little curly that may go into the next letter. So just that one change, let's reload it and see what that did. All right, so you see it brought the T up a good bit and it's no longer pushed into the H. We are going to take that bottom margin to a -0.1 from a -4, and you'll see that brought it up a bit. So that's fine, we can leave it at that. Now we're going to add to the right, we're going to add a 0.1 EM, and that brought the T out a little bit more. I mean, it brought the HE out a little bit more, so it's set off from the T. And we can try, let's add 0.15 here, then reload. All right, so that looks pretty good. Works for the T, let's see how it works for the other letters. Let's add a -2 to the bottom. Let's just see what that does. Reload, nothing. All right, so it really didn't do anything, so we're just going to keep it here. All right, so that's what we got for the T. So we're going to look at the next letter. The M, those settings work, so I think we're good. And the I, those settings work. The C, those settings work, so we're good. And then the F, I think that works. We could bump it up a little bit more, but I'm not going to worry about it unless we have another letter that runs close like that. Okay, so for this particular image, I have nothing in the alt tag, but this image repeats across every page. So I'm actually going to search the entire folder. And I am going to search for this whole line because it should be the same throughout. And I'm just going to add chapter into the alt tag. So a reading device will read this image as chapter, and then it'll come down here 1. All right. So that is it. The next thing I do is I just look through every page. We're just going to look through and make sure all the letters look just fine. Make sure this came through properly. Did. Now, normally I convert those into graphics, but knowing that I can embed Google Fonts without having to encrypt the file now, this is what I'm going to start doing instead. It's kind of funny. My client challenged me to figure out a way where she could have these curly script fonts in her book, only because her friend did it. Her friend, whoever formatted her book, used Vellum. So it made me think, well, how does Vellum get away with encrypting fonts? Well, they don't. They don't encrypt fonts. They use Google Fonts. So I had this thought many years ago that, you wouldn't have to encrypt a file if you use the free fonts, the open license fonts. But I never did figure it out because, it's just easier to tell clients it doesn't work. We can't embed fonts. It has to be encrypted, blah, 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 blah. But she really challenged me when she brought up the fact that Vellum does it. So I'm like, by golly, if Vellum does it, we can figure it out and do it for ourselves. By the way, I hate Vellum. Only because, who knows, it may put me out of a job one day, but I hope not, because they still have a long way to go before their formatting comes even close to something that you do in InDesign. All right, so the next thing I do is I just go through all the pages again. We're just going to take a quick peek at everything, make sure nothing looks off. All right, so there's the F, chapter 6. Got too many pages open, so my computer's going a little slow. All right, the W looks good. The D looks good. W again looks just fine. W again. The A looks good. The C, that C is touching the H a little bit. So what I am going to do is I am going to add a 0.5 to that right. It shouldn't have affected any of the other ones since we're pushing it over. All right, the B looks good. And the I looks good. The T looks good. All right, just a handful of pages left. Okay. I'm still here, I'm just waiting. All right, A looks good. That A looks good. The P is a little close, so we may just want to update. And in some cases, if it affects the other letters too much, if that additional space causes too much for other letters, that's when you come in and create ID drop cap 1, copy this and save it as ID drop cap 2, and just make that one letter the larger margin right. So we'll look at the other letters to see, and we may decide to do that, but right now I think we're fine. Yeah, that will be fine. The L, Still really, the F is still really close to that L. And again, this is viewing in Dreamweaver, and which is a good representation of HTML, but it may look like garbage in Kindle. So we're going to test this. And you know what? It did not chapter. I don't know why. Let's make sure we have it on the proper one. Select, replace all. Yes. Okay, the first time I did it, it did not find them all, which tells me something. Okay. M looks good. And then we just have a handful of pages to look through. And then we're almost done, and we can take a quick peek at what this looks like in Adobe Digital Editions. Now, one thing I have found out is that if you use Kindle Previewer to view, it will not show the embedded fonts. Just to let you know. I love Kindle Previewer, but I'm a little upset that it will not show the embedded fonts. All right, so something we've got going on here. This is not. Okay, so this should be centered. Okay, all the links are there. Again, Indesign created a bunch of junk here. I'm sure there's others that I can clean up, but I won't worry about it. Okay, so this image needs to be centered. So we need to say image centered. Why it didn't do it is beyond me, but we're going to call this 2 Nights and a Day by Cat Silver. All right, then all right, there it goes. Okay. All of that is fine. And I looks fine. Okay, all right, so now that I've checked everything, I'm gonna take a quick peek. I'm just gonna generate the EPUB again, and I'm going to actually look at the file size. All right, so we're at 7,000 megabytes. That's way too big. So I'm going to look at ways that we can make this smaller. And of course, the first thing you can do to make it smaller is look at your graphics. And we have some extra graphics in here, which I thought was what happened. So 1.png is the one we're going to keep, and then we're going to delete out 2.png and 6.png. So when we delete graphics after the fact, we need to make sure we remove all instances throughout the book. Otherwise, we're going to get validation errors. So I deleted out those 2 graphics. So we need to find every instance of those so we can make sure the code is set to 1.png. So I will show you how to do that. Now the next thing we're going to do, I brought this image in as a pretty high resolution image. I brought it in at 300 dpi, which is pretty high for an ebook. So I am going to work on reducing it. All right, but because this font is thin, I don't want to reduce it by much. Okay, so right now it is set to 1200 pixels wide. So I am just going to take that down to 800 pixels wide. and we're going to see what we get from that. So let me go Cat Silva, Dark Flame, Ebook, Prep, OEBPS. Oops, I was impatient. All right, and then we're going to save it. And we're going to see. All right, so that brought it down to 500. That's a little bit higher than I like, but she was okay with keeping her delivery fee around 10 cents. So, and she wanted that graphic to be as crisp as possible, so we can't do too much to it, otherwise it'll look bad. But for the cover, I am definitely going to take it down. I am going to take it down to 1,000, and I'm going to set the quality around 70% for the JPEG, and this should come through looking pretty decent. And that will get our file size down even more. All right, so we don't want to save anything. We don't want to save that again. And let's take a look at everything now. So still have several graphics, but I think we're going to be okay. All right, so now let's do this again. We're just going to delete this. Send to compressed zip folder. Drop. It's 2,000. All right, so the rule for Kindle, and it's funny because I have not had this be with my own books. It's always a lot lower, but they say it's 10 cents for every megabyte. So this would be a 20-cent delivery fee. But let's try to get it even lower. So we're going to have to do something to this graphic. Let's look at the sizes again. Hope you don't mind me just thinking out loud here. Get an idea of how I work. So we're going to open up this again. We're going to export it, export as. I'm actually going to take this down to 800 and reduce the quality to 60. And we'll save it again. And I'm going to try to get that other graphic down a little bit. So we are going to take it to export as PNG, and let's do 600. I don't want to change it to an 8-bit because it might be pretty bad. All right. Okay. All right, so we got both of those around 350. So this is going to put our book size a little bit lower. All right, send to compressed zip folder. All right, so now we're at 1375. So we should be within the 10-cent frame for delivery. So we're going to go with this. So dark flame EPUB -02 because I already sent her an 01. All right. And I just realized I need to make an edit in here for her, so this isn't 100% final yet. All right, so let's take a look at this in Adobe Digital Editions. That is not resizing. It should, but sometimes in Adobe Digital Editions it's not good. All right, so nothing is coming through. The fonts, everything is a mess. Why is this? You're troubleshooting with me, people. All right, let's drop it in to see if there's a validation error that's causing something to not display properly. That could be what the problem is. All right, so I have my EPUB checker here on my desktop, so I'm just going to drag and drop it. Oops, not like that though. Okay, so we do have an error in our, oh, I forgot to go in and remove those two PNGs. But this error could be what's causing the problem. So it says on line 16, so let's say line 16, it's probably screwed everything up. All right, so we're going to delete that. All right, the other thing I need to do is I need to find, we are going to find 2.png, and we are going to replace it with 1.png. Before we do this, let's look at your other file names, okay? We cannot do an auto search because it's going to replace that 32.png with a 31.png. So we need to find all. And what I'm going to do is copy this. And we're going to say replace all 2 PNGs with 1 PNG, and then we're going to add that chapter note in here. Chapter, replace all. Okay, and then we need to do the same with 6. And I had already replaced chapter. Okay. All right, the other locations, since we deleted out 6 and 2, we need to delete them out of the content OPF page. So we're going to open this up real quick and find the 2, which is here, and then find the 6, which is here. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to rezip this file up. I'm going to revalidate it. And we're going to check it again, and hopefully our fonts will be there this time. All right, so we're going to validate it again. Oh, duh. Come on, Steph. Okay. All right, let's close this down because it doesn't seem to, oh, it's looking at that one. All right, see, you can see how doofy I can be sometimes. All right, now we should work it. All right, so no errors, so we're good. All right, so now we're going to open it. All right, the cover still looks good. That's a little rough, but there's nothing we can really do about that. And it's going to look different on every device. The Great Vibes font is not coming through. So we need to figure that out. All right. And that is not coming through either. We have to troubleshoot here. Great Vibes, regular OTF. I'm just going back through and making sure everything. We don't have any errors, so we know that. So the error's got to be in the CSS or something. So Great Vibes here. So chapter. Other titles should be great vibes. Other titles, great vibes. Special, great vibes. And the drop cap is great vibes. So I'm going to pause this. It's going to take a little bit of troubleshooting on my part to figure out why this isn't viewing properly, and I will get back to you when I find the error in my ways. Okay, so the problem lied with something it had to do with Adobe Digital Edition. So, and now of course my computer is like going so slow. So if I open this up in Kindle PC for the Kindle app for the PC, this is what it looks like, which is fine. There's a couple of instances with the drop cap, like you can see it comes over here. But again, this is just the Kindle PC app, which is horrible to begin with. You'll notice the I is cut off there, and the C looked fine. And the F needs to come up. So there's still room for tweaking that I need to do for it to appear properly. I might decide to put a left margin in for this letter, and hopefully that will clear up these areas that are getting cut off. So I'm going to play around with that and see if we can get this to look better. My computer is completely bogged out right now, and so I'm going to pause this for a minute and come back to it. So I hope you enjoy my troubleshooting. All right, so quickly, I'm just testing it since it didn't seem to look right on Adobe Digital Editions. I am actually looking at it in Calibri. Which I do not like, by the way. But the fonts are there, so I know that the font issue is really a Adobe Digital Editions. And that's one of the things that always kind of deterred me from doing fonts, because I could never get them to view properly everywhere. So that's something that you have to think of. All right, so for the EPUB, we're just fine. The T looked good. M looks good. The I is still cut off, so I'm hoping I can correct that. C. All right, T. The F is still a little close. All right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to go back into the CSS. And I really, seriously, I just realized why my computer is going so slow. It's because of I have some serious space issues on my C drive. Don't ever buy a computer with like a really small disk drive, or you're going to be constantly deleting files when you have a lot of programs installed. Like, I don't have any documents saved on my C drive, but I'm going through and deleting some files that can go away to give me more space. But yeah, so I always get like, I think this one was only, yeah, it's only 237 gigabytes. So I am constantly deleting stuff when I have so many different things installed. So next time I get a computer, I am definitely going to be investing in one with just even though everything is on my external drive, I just have too many applications installed. So hopefully that helped and will help improve things. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I am going to go back into the CSS and just make a couple of minor tweaks. And I'm going to add in a left margin to that drop cap, and we're going to see what that does. So margin left, and I need a positive number, so we're just going to do 0.1 EM, okay? And we need to add that in. We're going to see what that looks like in just the Dreamweaver file. So that brought the letter over a little bit, which will be fine. Hopefully that I will no longer be cut off. And then I'm also going to bring up the top to 0.2. And then I'm hoping maybe even negative 0.25. All right, so that brings that F up a little bit. So we're going to try this and see what it looks like to get this going. I've wasted so much time on this ebook, but the good thing is that I'm problem solving. And so in the future, I will not hopefully have problems. All right, so we are going to, I'm on my other screen here, so we are going to copy this, delete this. We are going to send to, and we are going to do all this again. And then we are going to do that. And then we're going to see if we can open this up with Calibri ebook viewer. All right. All right, so that T looks good. M looks good. I looks good. See, by adding that left margin space, the I is no longer cut off. C is good. Went the wrong way. The F is good. F is good there. W. All right, so we're looking good. Everything looks great. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're just going to convert this to a Mobi, only because I now Kindle KDP is only accepting EPUB files or KPF files. They're no longer accepting Mobis for upload. So, so you may say, what's the point of a Mobi? Well, clients still can email Mobi files to Kindle addresses, so they would need the Mobi file to do that, as well as backloading onto a Kindle device. They will still need the Mobi, and certain sites such as BookFunnel and BookSprout, they still want the Mobi file, so I still send a Mobi file to my clients. I just let them know that to Kindle they need to upload the EPUB. All right, so now I am going to look at this. I'm going to look at it in the Kindle and see how it looks. And at this point, I know that the EPUB looks good. So if I can't get it to look 100% great in the Mobi file, at this point, what I'll do is I'll copy the EPUB folder and call it a Kindle folder and make tweaks to the CSS for that drop cap to work in Kindle. A couple of years ago, this is what we had to do. Not a couple, probably about 5 years ago. We actually had to have 2 different ebook files for the Kindle and for the EPUB, and we had to tweak certain aspects of the code for each. Now, I know Draft to Digital, they have all of this crazy code in the file that says, you know, kind of like a responsive website where it says if it's viewing on this type of screen, then do this, and that's just too complicated if you're hand coding things. So let's just cross our fingers that this, yeah, my computer is bogged down right now. My memory is zapped. So I am just, if I reboot my computer, I'm going to lose this recording. So just hope that everything looks good in the Mobi file. And thank you for hanging in with me if you got this far as we're troubleshooting this EPUB.